morning, everybody. Start this day. All right, so we just reviewed our photosynthesis, which is one half of our cellular energy cycle. What's the other half that we have to go over? What is it called? One half was photosynthesis, the other half is what we do. Cellular respiration. All right, so our target, as always, from this week, we will ask questions, investigate, provide explanations about the role of photosynthesis and cellular respiration. Today, cellular respiration. In the cycling of matter and flow of energy in the cell. Remember, we talked about law of conservation of energy. Is matter and energy destroyed? No. Just what? Yes, cycles, change forms. Students will be able to identify and label the reactants, right, what goes in, / inputs, and the products, or what goes out, outputs, of cellular respiration. This is your first slide. Again, we're going to see the formula, but I want you guys to have in mind and consistently remember this, because I will consistently tell you. In terms of the formula of photosynthesis, the formula of cellular respiration, it is the exact same, but what? But opposite, it's switch, right? If you know photosynthesis, you know cellular respiration. It's just the opposite. And we will look at that, and we'll go over that. Don't get old, you guys. When you get old, you get like these nose hairs, and sometimes myself and you guys. You said what? Well, at least it's not in my ears here. I heard when you get older, you start growing your ears too. Okay, cellular respiration is an aerobic process, right? You guys ever heard of doing aerobics? Right? Exercising, using oxygen. Aerobic is without oxygen, or it requires oxygen. We'll talk about what is the opposite of aerobic, something that does not require oxygen. But we say cellular respiration, again, is an aerobic process, requires oxygen. It's a 3-step process in which glucose, which is our sugar, is converted into usable energy known as what? What's that important 3-letter word? ATP. And so the 3 ways that we get our glucose, we see here are proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. Those are 3 of our what? What are those 3? Say it louder, Thomas. Macromolecules. And fats would be, what is the technical macromolecule for fats? Everybody? Lipids. So we have proteins, carbs, and lipids. We should hopefully know the 4th macromolecule that we're missing is nucleic acids, right, which we have not gone over yet until we get to genetics. And again, the reason why we eat, also the reason why we breathe, is to produce what at the end of the day? ATP, right? And we'll talk about what happens when you're not producing enough ATP. All right, we got it done. Ready to go? All right. You don't have to write this down. Just listen. cellular respiration is used by living organisms to grow, cellular division, and movement. Right? We got ingoing is our oxygen, out is coming out our carbon dioxide. We know that all those things get diffused within our lungs. And then the only important part that I want you to know is that how many molecules of oxygen do you need? What's on there? I don't ask hard questions. 6, right? Does that make sense over here? How many do you need? 6, right? Yep. Right, and then that oxygen goes into the cell, the organelle within the cell that processes that oxygen is mitochondria. Yes. All right, this is what we're going to be going over, but you're not going to draw this yet. We're going to draw an easier version of this. I'm just going to go through it quickly. But first I want to ask you, because the guy told you I'm going to say this over and over and over again. This is cellular respiration. The reactants, what goes in, glucose and oxygen. The products, what is made, water, when you go use the restroom, carbon dioxide, when you breathe out, and ATP, that's the energy that we're making, correct? What is the relationship of this to photosynthesis? What is the relationship of these two formulas for photosynthesis? How are these related? How is this formula of cellular respiration related to photosynthesis? You can tell me. You said it? It's flipped, right? Do we see that? What are the reactants of photosynthesis? Everybody, what is it? H2O. And instead of ATP, it's the light energy, right? The products of photosynthesis is glucose and, which we breathe, right? It's the exact same. That's why I said, if you know photosynthesis, you know cellular respiration. It's just opposite, right? It's just opposite. Right? So if you know one, you know the other. All right, so again, quickly, you don't have to draw this. I'm just going to go through it. Cellular respiration starts with that glucose, right? You just had some pizza or a slice of pie. That glucose goes through something called glycolysis. Lysis, anything ending in lysis means to break down. So we have glycolysis, which is breaking down glucose. It gives you 2 ATP. This happens outside the mitochondrion in the cytoplasm. Right? All of this is occurring inside the cell, right? We are inside the cell, right? We will not get outside of the cell until we get into genetics, right? Everything that we're talking about is occurring inside the cell. This first step is occurring in the cytoplasm. The second step is called Krebs cycle. That's the first step inside the mitochondrion. You get another 2 ATP, but what do you need in order to start that Krebs cycle? You need oxygen, right? You need to breathe. We'll talk about what happens when you don't have that oxygen. And then the third step, the most important because you get the most ATP, is called the electron transport chain, ETC. And how many ATP do we get from that? 32, right? For a total of how many? Everybody, I want to hear a group answer. 36, everybody? 36. And then out comes our what? Water, and then our carbon dioxide, right? You go to the restroom, you breathe out. Right? That's why I said this is the reason why you eat. It's the reason why you breathe. Right? Those are the 2 major inputs to start this process to produce the ATP. Where does that ATP go? Anywhere that needs energy. The more energy it needs, the more ATP it's going to receive. And we'll talk about which places in the body probably receive a lot of ATP. I want you to think about it now until we get to it later in the slides. You don't have to write this. Why? Because we already went over it, correct? We've already went over it. Again, the formula for photosynthesis, just switch, right? This is cellular respiration. If we switch it, what do plants take in? Carbon dioxide, water, and then that light energy. What do plants take out? That glucose and that 6 molecules of oxygen that we need, right? It's just flipped. I'm gonna say that a lot to the point where you're gonna get annoyed, right? It's the same but flipped. Again, you don't have to draw this, just to show. You have that glucose, that's the molecular formula for glucose. You have your oxygen, remember oxygen is O2, not just one molecule of oxygen, but two. That turns into, in terms of the process, we'll talk about it, ATP, and then obviously we breathe out that carbon dioxide, and then you have that water which we expel. You don't have to draw or write this because you've already written about adenosine triphosphate, correct? Yes. The only thing that I would write is what's B, the molecule that provides energy for cells. Which cells? All cells. So I would write ATP, arrow, the molecule that provides energy for cells. I probably would also highlight that ATP part so you can reference it quickly. So another 15 seconds, shouldn't be that long. So ATP, the molecule that provides energy for cells. Again, which cells? All cells. You don't have to draw this. We're not at that part yet. We're going to do our graphic organizer that we always do. We're going to draw the step and process of cellular respiration. It is a molecule that works like a rechargeable battery. Again, I will say a lot of stuff in biology, a lot of stuff is similar, right? What does your body like to do? It likes to do as much as it can by using as little what? Energy as possible. Does it like to reuse things? 100%. This is just another example, right? This allows you to use it, your body like a battery, and then when it gets drained, what do you need to do to recharge it? What do? You eat, right? And you rest. Yes. Right? You're recharging yourself. The way that this happens, we talked about it yesterday. What is the main part of ATP that is providing the energy? What letter do we see? P, phosphate, right? So adenosine triphosphate has 3 phosphates on it. Every time energy is used, it loses a phosphate. But do you think you can go back in the cycle to get another phosphate on it so it can go again? 100%, right? It's recycling, right? It is recycling. Again, glucose is broken down to recharge multiple ATP molecules. You guys will know that, again, that's called glycolysis, right, to break down. So, what are the inputs of cellular respiration? What goes in? So think about it. The way I want you guys to think about this is, in terms of hopefully not making you guys get confused, think about it practically, right? This is biology. Everything is real life. Cellular respirations are what humans do, right? Animals. So what do humans take in? What are the inputs of cellular respiration? Marvelous. Give me one. Give me one. What do you take in? Food, right? In the form of? Help them out. Glucose, right? Sugar, right? And so what else do you need? Oxygen, right? We need oxygen, we need food, we need glucose, right? Whether it's proteins, fats, carbohydrates. You don't have to draw this. ATP, the generation in cellular respiration, 32 to 38. So that little squiggly line means about, right? So we say on average 36, but it could be anywhere from 32 to 38. Are formed from the breakdown of one glucose molecule. I think that's kind of cool that one glucose molecule gives you 32 to 38 ATP, right? But this is why it's important that if you eat a lot, right, a lot of glucose, but you don't exercise, where's that energy going? Where's it going to get stored as? Fat, yeah. It's going to get stored as fat. And then when you don't eat, or if you're on like one of those Survivor shows and you have no food available, what now is being used to produce that ATP? What's being burned? The fat, right? And again, we should all know this. What organelle is responsible for this process in humans? What's the name of the organelle, the powerhouse? Mitochondria. Yes. You guys will write this down. Powerhouse of the cell. You know this. If it's a mitochondrion, it's singular. If it's mitochondria, it's many. So we say that the mitochondrion, right, one, is a double membrane organelle found in most eukaryotic cells, organisms. It is the power plant of the cell. The important thing to know about this is, again, like many organelles or structures in the body, we have those folds. In this case, they're called cristae, and they provide surface area. It provides as much space to conduct the electron transport chain, aka cellular respiration. Right? We'll talk about the two steps that happen inside the mitochondrion, Krebs cycle and ETC. How many phosphates does ATP have? 3. Yes, write that down, please. And as you're writing this down, I told you earlier to start thinking about it. What parts of the body do you think needs a lot of ATP? Brain, 100%, right? What else? Heart, 100%. What else? I can say that when you're eating, right? Not when you're not eating, no. But I can say when you do eat, yes. Your lungs, 100%. What else? What else do we think? What about our nerves? What about our neuronal cells? Right? What's all throughout our body that you think needs a lot of ATP? I have a lot of them. Yes, muscles, right? And we'll talk about what happens when you don't breathe enough oxygen and your muscles do not get that ATP. That is a slide under electron microscope of mitochondria. And again, we should see mitochondria. Well, mitochondria, there's more than one. And we see those folds. We see those cristae. Cellular respiration happens in the mitochondrion. Cellular respiration is a 3-step process. We will go over all 3 steps. That breaks down what? What is it breaking down? What is it breaking down? Glucose molecules, yes. And it produces around 38 what? 38 what? It produces around 38 ATP, yes. Glucose, ATP. This is your first step. Yes, this is your first step. I would suggest start on a fresh piece of paper, write cellular respiration really big on that blank piece, highlight it, then highlight that one, right, your first line, step 1, dash, dash, glycolysis. You will also be drawing this, but I'm going to go back. Don't worry. because it's the same picture, right? So after this slide, you're just what? Writing the notes. Yes, sir. Thank you. All right, make sure you use those highlighters so you can reference it quickly. So we say the first step, again, I will talk as you guys write. The first step is glycolysis. Again, glycolysis means to break down. What is it breaking down? Our glucose. So glycolysis is when glucose is broken down in the cytoplasm to form the product pyruvate, which then enters the mitochondrion. This step, glycolysis, produces 2 ATP. So if you want to also add this as we go through to help. Step 1. And again, 2 ATP. So we have that glucose. It undergoes glycolysis. Glycolysis breaks down that glucose to give us pyruvate. Once we get pyruvate, we are now allowed to enter the mitochondria. Right, this is the first step, and again, it happens in the cytoplasm. But again, this part you don't have to draw, but I just want you to understand the concept. Everything here is still all happening in the cell, right? All this is happening in the cell. Within the cell, the first step happens in the cytoplasm. And then again, that second step, once it turns to pyruvate, is able to go into the mitochondrion, and then after you guys finish drawing, we'll talk about what that second step is once it enters the mitochondria. The more colors you use, the better.